Happy Monday, everybody. Okay, so last week we got some great news coming out of Washington, D.C. And I kind of say that tongue in cheek. And actually, I don't say it kind of tongue in cheek, it's tongue in cheek. Let's be honest. Okay, so last quarter of 2023, the fourth quarter, gross domestic product grew by 3.3%. Now, just taken by itself, that's great news, right? Because Wall Street had been hoping for a 2% growth in GDP. So 3%, 3.3% smashed through that, and we saw the stock market respond accordingly. It went up to even higher highs, nosebleed heights, right? But and let's for a minute, because I do question some of the numbers that went into that 3.3% growth, but let's not even look at those. Let's look at that number in comparison to other numbers, because everything is relevant. Okay, so imagine yourself, you take a test and you get 10 questions right. Should we celebrate? I don't know. Depends. How many questions were there? If there were only 10 questions and you got 10 right, I'd say, yeah, let's celebrate. If there were 100 questions and you got 10 right, I'd say, hey, you know what? Let's don't celebrate. Let's go back to the books and start studying a little more. Okay? So let's take this 3.3% GDP growth into perspective. Now, GDP, again, that's the term for what a country generates in economic activity. So your economy is growing by 3.3% in essence. Okay, but let's take a step back. Let's look at what happened to the U.S. debt last quarter, because that starts to help us understand what 3.3% means. So during the same time of this 3.3% growth, the U.S. budget deficit rose more than 50%. And remember, U.S. budget deficit, the United States government, they don't budget to zero. They budget past zero into debt spending, right? So it's like, imagine that you make a certain salary, but your expenses are more than that. So you spend more by going into further and further debt. That's what the United States government does. It's called deficit spending. Well, that deficit just on that annual income grew by more than 50%. Meanwhile, the total, all right, so then let's go back to you and I. Let's say you're spending on a credit card to keep up with your expenses because you're not generating enough. Well, every year that credit card debt adds to your existing debt, right? So that existing debt is we call US debt. And that grew by $834 billion last quarter. So more than 154% than the GDP growth. Okay? So now that 3.3% doesn't look so great. Okay, so let's boil it down to simpler numbers. It now takes $1.55 of budget deficit, that's the U.S. spending more than it makes. It takes $1.55 to generate $1 of growth. Okay, so imagine you are a parent and you've got a child and you are investing into their income making potential, and you have to spend $1.55 in order for them to make $1. That's a bad return on your money, right? You're doing something wrong if that's the case. Or the kid's doing something wrong, one or the other. Here's another way to look at it. Let's look at your total debt. That includes your mortgage, your car loans, your credit cards, all that. You have to grow your total debt $2.50 just for your kid to earn an additional dollar. Again, not a great return on your money. In fact, that's a horrible return on your money. You've lost money. You would have been better off just giving your kid that money in the first place. So borrow $1.55 if you want, but just give it straight to them, and you're not losing money. So this all comes back down to you must respect debt. And that's what I keep harping on. And it's not so much to you, our wonderful watchers and viewers, listeners, but really to the United States government. They don't respect debt. Debt can be a powerful tool, and in the right hands, with wisdom and good decision making, you can bless your life with that, just like any other tool. But if you don't respect it, it can destroy your life. And so that's my concern. So let's go back to the 3.3% GDP growth. Is it good news? Well, I don't think so. Did it spike the stock market? Yeah, it did. But that's my concern with the stock market as well, as it achieves higher and higher nosebleed heights. And rest assured, we are investing your money well. And part of what we're taking into account is the US dollar and whether or not it's sustainable to keep spending more than the return you get, right? So with that, just know that we're investing your money with that perspective, not just one little 3.3% GDP growth. We're looking at the bigger picture, and you can sleep well at night. Okay, with that, you guys have a great week, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.